Hi, good morning everybody. I'm going to start with a bit of housekeeping actually, because this isn't actually my presentation. My co-founder Nikki Watson is meant to be delivering this talk or these slides, and she sent me them last night and said I'm too ill and sends her apologies. So forgive me as I sort of go through her slides, but I'm going to sort of talk to you about the new CJEU rulings and the sort of the guidance that was issued on the 1st of October, and sort of how that affects businesses in terms of cookies, where they're placed, and sort of the affirmative or the positive action that somebody has to take before a cookie is placed on their browser. I think if you look at the landscape now, I think it's fair to say that probably 99.9% of websites that are out there aren't compliant. There are some horror stories. I think if you look at, in terms of going through that cookie consent journey, where you decline, I don't want you to place any cookies on my browser, and then you look at it and they've placed 120 odd cookies onto your browser, and there's no way of redressing that or controlling that or taking that sort of affirmative action to actually have the choice to actually do that. So what the CJEU have ruled, or the guidance that they've sent out, that consent obtained using a pre-tick box is no longer valid. It doesn't meet the requirements of legislation as it stands now, the GDPR legislation, or even legislation that's sort of will come into force in the next sort of 12 months, 18 months. So according to them, the use of a pre-tick box makes it practically impossible to clarify in an objective manner. So what they're saying is that now cookies, you need to have explicit consent. You should explain in simple language what you're actually going to do with that data once you've sort of taken it. And I guess, you know, that default off unless they're sort of strictly necessary in terms of cookies. So those first, particularly those third-party cookies that you're placing on people's browser when they first sort of visit your site, the responsibility lies with you in terms of how you manage that and where that data is actually going to. So it's not just cookies. I guess it's about the technology that you use in a wider sense. So your Google Analytics, Facebook, you know, ultimately you're responsible as the website owner for the cookies that you place on people's browsers. So if we have a look at what that kind of means from a business point of view, organisations, you need to have that explicit consent, and you're sort of marketing consent to those individuals. So from a business point of view, it's either are you with the 0.1% or are you with the 99.19 in terms of what you do. We're engaged as an organisation with companies that see legislation in a positive way. They see it as a way of being able to establish strength, trust in their product, to allow people to have that sort of transparency and choice. This is what we're going to do with your data. This is how we're actually interacting with you. You're setting, you know, that brand reputation that you're looking to establish. The pre-banner or cookie banner that's placed or is visible, that's the first interaction that you'll have with somebody. And if you're presenting your data privacy notices and how you're going to interact with those individuals in a positive way, you're more likely, I think, to sort of engage, and people will stay with you longer. We spent a lot of time working with Gartner over the last 18 months or so, and Nadir is sort of quite a recognised business analyst within sort of his sector. And he has sort of put this quote, and I'll read it out to you. Simply put, customers today are inclined more than ever to cross the road over to the competition, and in some cases pay a premium if that's where they believe their personal data will be best cared for. So that's sort of a direct quote from Gartner, and that's how they see this consent journey. And people will walk and go to your competition if they believe that the competition will look after their data in a better way. So as business owners, what does that mean for your organisation? Well, you have to market consent to your users. It's your responsibility to communicate effectively the use of the cookies to your users and provide them with a creative and engaging consent process. So it's that leads to better customer retention, increased brand trust, and it sets you aside from your competition because you're taking that step to actually lay it out in simple English for people to engage and consent with you. So I guess consumers are becoming more aware of how organisations are using their data. I'm currently sort of getting stuck into this book, which is Damon Bradfield's How to Build a Better Internet. So this is the guy, the co-founder of WeTransfer. So they're all sort of ad revenue. That's how they make their money. And he really sort of sets it aside in terms of what that consent journey looks like. So his prologue of the book is basically somebody that goes into a trainer store, into a Nike store, tries on a couple of pairs of trainers, says to the shop assistant that he doesn't actually want them, he's going to go online and buy them from somewhere else. But the prologue sort of talks about how every time he looks out of the window, the shop assistant stood there with his phone saying, "Do you want to buy these trainers?" And everywhere he looks, the guy's tracking him. And that's kind of how it is really with the third-party cookies that are being placed on browsers. So it's a good book if you get a chance to sort of dig it out, but he sets it out really nicely. But there are sort of other it's not just sort of third-party cookies. They're super cookies, zombie cookies. So these are cookies that can track. Well, they have a zombie cookie has a unique ID attached to it, and once it's been deleted, it comes back to life, and you never get rid of it really. So I guess that sort of sends back to how you kind of interact and how you present your privacy notices or your consent journey within individuals. And that's kind of where Nikki got to. So I'm going to I know that I've rattled through that really quickly, probably far too quickly than I should have done. I've got 13 minutes to answer any questions that you might have. I don't mind not taking any questions, to be perfectly honest. If there's anything, we're on stand 10, I think it is, around the corner. If anybody's got any sort of questions, okay.
If the free tick box is no longer acceptable, what is explicit consent? What's the organisation?
It's down to where you are globally. So, different territories have different jurisdictions, have different legislation. If you're looking at GDPR, you need to have positive affirmative action. So somebody has to go in and tick that box to say, yes, I want you to place tracking cookies on my browser, and I'm happy for you to do that. That's it. That's what the ruling from CJEU says. That's what data protection legislation says. That's what GDPR says. That cookies are identifiable. E-privacy will sort of focus in and concentrate on that. But it's coming. The legislation's there already, but enforcing it, I think it will come kind of this year in that sense. Does that answer your question?
We've got another question over here.
Hello? Let me go back to my notes. So this is a super cookie can track the websites. Thanks, made it bigger. Look at that. Can track the website's time a user. So they're asking what is the difference between a super cookie, or what is a super cookie and what is a zombie cookie. So a super cookie can track the website's time a user visits them, as well as following the user despite them closing the browser or changing to a different browser. It can access information collected by traditional tracking cookies, including logging information, cached images and files, plug-in data, store data information even after the traditional cookie has been deleted. A zombie cookie has a unique ID attached to it. Once it's been deleted, it can recreate itself and still hold the same unique ID. The issue with this cookie is it's very difficult to delete permanently, and you can tack it through different web sessions and browsers due to it being stored outside of the web browser. I'm not technical, by the way, so if you saw my mouth moving, I was reading that. So
We've got another question here.
I'm a bit confused about this. You said that people need to take a positive affirmative action to go and opt into having cookies, but all websites just have a banner that says, I accept your cookies, and I, like everybody else, just accept all the cookies.
Yeah.
So I've never seen anyone who says you have to go here to accept a cookie. To opt into marketing, yes, but to accept a cookie?
that's the ruling. So
all the websites that just say, click here to accept the cookies, otherwise we're not going to show you all the stuff, they're all basically non-compliant.
No, I think if you go to some of the cookies, you go under settings, you see how to change your preferences on it.
Yeah.
It's not made too clear for people that are not aware, not understanding it properly. But if you look at a lot of websites and a lot of software that uses cookie consent, you have the option of changing it.
So GDPR says that you have to offer the individual, your end user, transparency and choice. If you're sort of implying that by continuing to use their website that you consent to cookies being placed on the browser, that isn't compliant in terms of the letter of the law. And 99.9% of websites are on the wrong side of the legislation currently. A cookie can be an identifiable piece of information. You can track it back to an individual. So once that person goes onto your website to identify themselves, then they marry that that's married together with their cookie consent. Is that right? Yeah? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. How do you identify super cookies and zombie cookies? Let's say if you tick to accept cookies,
Well,
you don't know what they are.
You're placing cookies on, it's your responsibility for the cookies that you have within your domain or your ecosystem, and it's your responsibility for the cookies that are placed onto people's browsers. So you'll have defined those. Those will sit somewhere. Somebody in a marketing department or some department will have placed those cookies on the domain at some point, and you need to sort of manage that really in terms of where they're being placed and who's placed them.
We've got another question here.
Apologies if this is a bit ignorant, because it could have very well been on your first slide and I might have missed it. Let's imagine we're sad enough that we actually want to read that ruling in full. Is there a citation for it or something where we can look it up so we can take a read of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's you can Google it.
I was hoping for something a little more than just Google it.
I'll dig it out for you, and if you come and see me, I'll send it to you.
Brilliant, thank you.
So I don't know if I've missed the point with this, but you need explicit consent for cookies. I get that. One of the points of GDPR is consent is as easy to withdraw as it is to give.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got these zombie cookies that come back from the dead. So how does that work? So if I go, actually stop processing, I don't consent, go away, I don't want your cookies, but they're deleted, but they come back from the dead. So are zombie cookies this thing that essentially says, this is what the law says, but we're going to have these cookies anyway? Can you ever be compliant if you have a zombie cookie?
It is with third-party cookies already. It's like, this is what the legislation says, but we're still going to place them on your browser anyway. So it's just a definition of a type of cookie. I'm like I said, I'm not massively technical in that sense, and I feel as if I'm going down a rabbit hole that I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get out of, to be honest. But if we can exchange details, I'll get somebody to sort of contact you, and if you want to have a lengthened conversation about zombie cookies, then I can find somebody that will be happy to have that conversation with you. Yeah? Right, 6 minutes.
I think we've got more than enough questions.
Yeah, sorry, just one question for me. I was under the impression that you didn't need consent if they were essential cookies, but if they were non-essential cookies, you did need consent.
So strictly necessary cookies,
Yeah.
you can load those. That's sort of how a website functions, and they're called strictly necessary because they're strictly necessary for your website to
So
run.
the ruling hasn't changed that, so it's just a non-essential cookies.
It's for
It's
tracking,
for tracking
marketing
third party.
cookies, performance cookies, cookies where, third-party cookies where that information is going to somebody, to a third party. Yeah.
I think my question's around, are we saying that with the changes legislation, when I now visit another website that has a cookie on it, it should ask me again? Or does the new ruling actually say, if you've already agreed previously on that website and you return to it, you don't then have to be asked again?
No.
So in a way, a message needs to go out to people. You want to delete all the cookies on your machine so that you get the
Start
new
again.
tick the box option. And do we actually think that the legislation doesn't go far enough because of the zombie element?
Well, I guess I don't know what e-privacy is going to look like, but that will. I think when the GDPR legislation and e-privacy should have happened at the same time, and because it hasn't, there's this disconnect in between. The GDPR handles one side, e-privacy should handle another side. So it's the doing and the actual enforcing of that. So it should have happened at the same time. It hasn't, and I think this is why we're in a bit of limbo in terms of, particularly with cookies.
Hi there.
Hello.
Similarly, not technical.
Good.
On the run-up to GDPR in May 18, threw my hands in the air about cookies and ended up implementing the same software that the ICO use on their website.
Before they changed it so it was compliant?
Thankfully, it's the same software. I've just checked. It's still there now. Is the ICO website an example of where cookie management is in best practice?
I haven't looked at it recently. I think that they give you the choice and they're transparent in the messaging and it's easy to read and understand. So on that basis, then yes, you have the ability to be able to go in and withdraw your consent. So in that way, again, they're compliant. 3 minutes.
It's extra time.
There's no extra, I've been told there's no extra time. My helicopter's waiting for me and it's leaving in 5 minutes.
There is extra time.
There isn't extra time, John. John, there isn't extra time. There isn't. I've already answered too many questions. No.
Following on from that last gentleman's question, the ICO, they will actually give you access to a definition of all the cookies that they put on your site.
That's right.
Is that granularity necessary? Because a lot of websites, they will say, they will appear to be compliant because they'll say, we put cookies on your machine, do you accept that? And so on the face of it, a lot of people think that's all you need to do, but you've got no idea of exactly what cookies they're putting on your website, which I guess isn't really good enough. Is that the case?
Well, we engage with organisations that, like I said, that look at it positively, and it's all about that transparency and choice. So if you've got a cookie table that you present as part of your cookie notice, then it's your opportunity to be as granular and to be as open as you want to be as an organisation, to say, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, and this is what we're going to do with the data once we've gathered that. So it's down to sort of your organisation at that sort of C level. Is, do you take data privacy seriously? Do you want to sort of strengthen your brand, and do you see trust in the data and how you gain that consent as a vehicle for sort of obtaining that trust? So it's down to the individual organisation. the legislation's there. You either you're obliged to be able to offer that transparency and choice. So it's down to the individual organisation, I guess. Does that answer you? Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for all the questions.